extremely happy to be publishing Anu Malhotra's incredible work, a work that has taken her almost 20 years, in two different formats, film and then the book, Shamans of the Himalayas. Anu Malhotra, for all of us growing up in the early 90s, travel programs on Doordarshan were synonymous with AIM television, and all of us know of Namaste India and Indian Holiday. Those programs introduced us to the incredible India that we have. And Incredible India is also a slogan that Anu actually coined. It has been brilliant, absolutely wonderful to get this, to be able to publish this book. I have to thank Antara for that, passing the book my way. This is a world that I had no idea about, no knowledge about, and then reading all about it and finding out the incredible world of the shamans of the Himalayas was such a learning experience. I'd like to call upon Ajay Mago.
Thank you, Shantanu. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Om Books International, it is my privilege to welcome you to this special occasion, the launch of Shamans of the Himalayas, authored by the acclaimed filmmaker, documentarian, and cultural chronicle, Anu Malhotra. We are especially honored by the presence of our esteemed chief guest, Mr. Pavan K Varma, a distinguished former diplomat, prolific author, former member of parliament, and one of India's most respected and articulate voices on culture, politics, and civilizational thought. Sir, we are deeply grateful for your gracious presence this evening. Shamans of the Himalayas is an extraordinary work, the culmination of years of dedicated fieldwork, careful observation, and profound engagement. It takes readers into the spiritual and cultural heart of the Kullu Valley in Himachal Pradesh, a region widely known as Devbhumi, the land of gods. Through this immersive and richly illustrated volume, which draws deeply from the powerful documentaries Anu Malhotra has made on the subject, she introduces us to the fascinating world of Himachali shamans, spiritual guides who transverse the realms of the material and the mystical events. With unprecedented access, she captures sacred rituals, healing practices, exorcism, and magical religious ceremonies that have rarely, if ever, been documented in such depth. Yet, this book is far more than the visual or ethnographic record. It is a thoughtful exploration of the intersection between belief, tradition, and community, an insight into how ancient shamanic practices continue to inform the psychological and social fabric of local life. At Om Books International, we are honored to be the publishing partner for a work of such enduring cultural and anthropological significance. In a world of increasingly shaped by modernity and uniformity, Shamans of the Himalayas stands as a powerful act of preservation and storytelling, a bridge between worlds. I would like to express our sincere gratitude to Anu Malhotra for entrusting us with this important and timely publication. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Ajay, and I'm sorry I was not dressed properly for the occasion. I had to put this on. I would now like to invite our chief guest, Mr. Pavan Varma, the author, Anu Malhotra, our publisher, Ajay Mago, and CEO, Sanjay Mago of Om Books International on stage for the proper book release. Now I request Anu to present Mr. Varma with a shawl and the traditional Kullu topi. If we could just have the...
For me, It's a great privilege to be releasing Anu's book on the Shamans of the Himalayas because I must make a disclosure of bias. And the bias is that I'm biased towards Anu. I'm biased towards her because of her remarkable perseverance in exploring the unfamiliar. Over the years, as she spent time alone in the hills, in Devbhumi as she calls it, she began her odyssey to discover the indigenous communities and their culture. We are all perhaps aware that they exist. Anyone familiar with the Himalayas know that they exist, but to get under the surface of things, go deeper, to do that with empathy, to research and to understand, to have an open mind, these are qualities of a true researcher. And in her case, the research was definitely hyphenated with passion. She's an extremely talented filmmaker, most of you know that. And the work that she has done in the visual format on subjects similar to this stand testimony to that. In a way, this book is important for us to read. And I would really urge all of you to do that because normally we see what she explores with so much respect and reverence as exotica. We see it as some kind of boutique culture, more noteworthy for the sartorial exuberance of those who practice it, rather than the deeper meanings behind some of their rituals, some of their practices, some of their beliefs, some of their convictions. It's seen by us, we look upon them as curiosity. And I genuinely think that we need to go beyond that because there is another world there. As I was glancing through this book, my respect for her work grew because she studies their beliefs, traditions, and notions which we speak about but don't internalize. Well-being, community, even happiness, togetherness, shared values. So I would like to sincerely congratulate her on this book, to her publishers.
I'd like to call upon Anu.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I am really happy to see many friends over here. Thank you, really, and thank you, Pavan, so much for being here. This was just to thank all of you for being here. Heartfelt gratitude.
Now, as the last part of this evening, we have with us Antara Dutta, Associate Professor of English in Janki Devi College, specializing in post-colonial literature and politics, and a terrific travel writer. Antara is responsible for Om actually getting to publish the book. She introduced Anu and the book to me. Antara, may we have you on stage here for a conversation with Anu and me on Shamans of the Himalayas. It's a short conversation. A round of applause for Antara and Anu. Anu, what is it about, what is this shamanic tradition all about, for the uninitiated?
I think most people don't realize that we have shamans in every region of the country. Unfortunately, or fortunately, since we are all educated in the English language, in schools, in the Western education system, we are really not aware of folk culture and village culture, but actually that constitutes almost 80% of this country. Shamanism is common. You have shamans all over India. They're just called by different words. In Himachal, you will say gur, or you will say chela in the Chamba Valley. You will say ojhas. You will say, there are different words in all the regions of India. What is shamanism? So shamanism is the oldest spiritual modality known to humankind. It's based in animism. Now, what is animism? Animism believes that everything is alive, everything is conscious, sentient. And if you look at it in the modern scientific terms, everything is energy. So everything, whether it's a chair or whether it's flowers or trees, everything is energy. It's just that there are different frequencies that they vibrate at. So people or any organism which is vibrating at the same energy frequency as something else will be able to communicate with it because it's an energetic play. Shamanism has been researched by a plethora of anthropologists world over. And it goes back to almost 60,000 years ago. What's interesting is that some anthropologists have actually tied it to, of course, initially the huge Gondwana type of migrations of humans from Africa that went to different directions, came to India. But the word shaman comes from the Siberian shamans, the language. However, we've had some anthropologists who've said that this word may come from the word shaman, which is, you know what shaman is, a wandering sage in India. Because one of the anthropologists that I read, Albert Winoldo, said that traditions in South America are very, very similar to those found in the Himalayas. So there was a migration at that time to South America. So it could very well be that this was something that, went all the way to South America. And shamanism believes in animism, that everything has life. It also believes that spirits reside in everything. After all, the whole world is composed of different dimensions. I think if humans think that, we know everything, and we live in a particular dimension, and that's all there is quite arrogant because we have different dimensions. Spirits or different sentient beings reside in those, and shamans have the ability to communicate with these spirits. Now, what does a shaman do? A shaman from time immemorial, we're talking 60,000 years ago, he was the key figure in his tribal community, in his society, in his village. And what would he do? He was the healer, he's a diviner, he's the oracle, basically for the well-being of the community. They also believe that sometimes ill health is caused by spirits or is caused by a disturbance in the social fabric. And what they do is enter into an altered state of consciousness and get into the different dimensions to heal people with the help of spirits. I mean, that's broadly it. I'm just being very brief, but it's quite complicated.
Antara, bringing you in with your observation on the book and what Anu has done with the subject.
I've had the privilege of witnessing the beginning of this project when Anu started this project in the early 2000s, and I was on a holiday with her to Himachal, and what she showed me, only in glimpses, of course, then she went on to make this 4-part documentary. And I've been there as a tourist. I've kind of, done all the touristy things. But just a little glimpse of a world which is there, but it's invisible to outsiders. And Anu will talk about it, that, how she actually managed to get access to this world is absolutely fascinating. And I have seen Anu work on this project for more than 16, 17 years. As I said, I was witness to the beginning of the project, and then she went on to make the documentary, and then she spent more than 5 to 7 years researching on the subject. She also learned shamanism. She has done courses on shamanism and South American shamanism. So she is someone who goes into a subject not just intellectually, but also experientially. And this is signature Anu, is that it's not something that she reads. And of course, reading is part of it, observing is part of it, but she actually does things experientially as well. And that is something which is absolutely remarkable about Anu. And of course, in this work, when people read the book, they'll realize it. But this has been Anu's signature style in everything that she has done, all her travel shows, all the other documentaries that she's done. But I would like to ask Anu something about the Devta culture of the valley, and particularly about, the divine possession. That part was very, very fascinating for me. So, Anu, if you'd like to say something about it.
So I think everybody knows about, when they first heard the word shaman, they think about South American shamanism. Now, we have shamanism all across the globe, in North America, in South America, in all of Asia, in Europe. In Europe, it was known, of course, as Wicca, witchcraft. The Celtic had a huge shamanic tradition. It's all over Oceania, Pacific, so all over the world, Siberia, the cradle of shamanism. But all shamanic traditions are aligned with the culture of the particular society. So it reflects the culture, it reflects the needs. So there are different modalities. Shamanism is just a very broad term. The difference between the shamanism that you see in South America and in India and Southeast Asia is divine possession. Now, this is something what you saw with, and also I think in the last, at least over here, what is astonishing is, when I researched it, is that how little we actually know about this phenomena. This phenomena has been recorded by maybe hundreds of anthropologists around the world for over a century. Imagine, Plato has identified, say, 5 different types of possession. For instance, if you were prophetic, you were possessed by Apollo. If you were poetic, you were possessed by Dionysus. If it was erotica, then you were possessed by Eros and Aphrodite. And if you were divinely possessed, then it depends on the deity. And 4th century, what was very famous were the oracle temples in Rome, Delphi. People still go there. And what was the Delphi oracle? All individuals and the government would go to get their guidance from the oracle of Delphi. We have divine possession, kind of documented by many, many anthropologists from all. It's all there in the book, which explains what is divine possession, what actually happens. The other interesting thing to note is that to be divinely possessed, you have to have the ability to go into trance. Now, I know a lot of people say that that's a very, this term, you have rave parties and people are going into trance and trance music. But it's actually exactly that. Because the human brain, okay, let me explain it scientifically. The human brain has 5 different frequencies. If you're in beta frequency, then you're normal consciousness. If you're in alpha, which is a different hertz, you're in lower hertz, you are in meditation. If you are in theta, you are in meditation, and of course in deep sleep. What scientists have found is that when people get divinely, when they go into trance, they have gone into a theta state, which is a different brain wave. And that theta state normally is when you sleep. So you can actually see that the person has gone into a completely different reality. And in that reality, they can access knowledge. They can access what they call, the font of wisdom and human memories that exist, what we call the Akashic records. That's what it is. They can actually access it all. So there is a scientific explanation to all of this. It's just that we don't know. And there are many ways to get into trance. So what people don't understand also is that all of us go into trance several times a day. When you're daydreaming, you're in trance. When you are watching a film or a book and you lose track of yourself, you're in trance. You've gone away. When you watch a film and you start emoting with it, Why are you emoting with it? Because you've gone into trance, you know. So it's a very normal and it's a very healing phenomena. Because remember, meditation is healing. You go into theta state when you're in trance. That is when you can access different realities, different dimensions, and that is what shamans do. And that is why, world over, the only way you can become a shaman is if you have the ability to go into trance, and you exhibit that. It's not a voluntary choice.
So when you mentioned shamanism in South America being different from here, in terms of this divine possession, so they don't have divine possession.
No, they don't get divinely possessed. They can, but what they do is that, because there are three ways of possession. One is when you leave your body and go into, your consciousness goes into another domain, and you access spirits there, right? Which is what they do.
Okay.
Or you meet spirits in a common domain. But divine possession is that you empty yourself and you allow the deity to take possession. And over 100 years, so many anthropologists have noted that the modalities of trance and divine possession follow the same pattern, whether it's South America or it's Kullu Valley, that the person will have a change in voice, they will have a change in their body, and they will have a change in personality.
Yeah.
And after the event, they will have amnesia. And this has been noted by and documented by hundreds of anthropologists around the world. It's just that we don't know.
So, Anu, could you tell us a little bit about the role that the shaman plays in a community? Because so much of your work is about community relationships, relationship between humans and nature. So that aspect of shamanism, if you could talk a little bit about.
So shamans in their community are the central figures, because they are the doctors, they are the astrologers, they are the oracles, they do your divinations, they are responsible for the well-being of the community. Let me give you another example. The Dalai Lama has a famous oracle, the Nechung oracle. It was this oracle, and this Nechung oracle still advises the Dalai Lama. He goes into divine possession trance and still advises the Dalai Lama. In fact, in 1959, who asked the Dalai Lama to leave Tibet? It was the oracle who said, the Chinese are coming, run. Not only did the oracle tell him to come to India, he even gave him the route that would be the safe route. He looked ahead and prophesied the correct route. So we have oracles, and every community has them. You have the Ladakhi monks who are diviners and oracles. And again, when you look in South India, in every region and every state, you have this. You also have in communities, when you talk about divine possession, where locals get, you have masses who get divinely possessed, like the Siri cult in Karnataka, like the Kamakhya festival, where hundreds get into trance. So this is a very common phenomenon. It's just that we city-bred people don't know.
Yeah, in fact, that's one of the incredible things about the book. How a person like that, can get into this world and bring out an entirely different. What was it like? I'm sure when you went into it, like it happened for me, and we'll talk about my reason for doing the book, or I'm sure when you went into it, you were as skeptical as outsider, or like, what was it like? You were, as you mentioned in the book, that, okay, we think of ourselves as these very rational and scientific people. We are, ye sab to, aime hi baatein hain, like.
I was skeptical till I witnessed my first trance and divine possession. There is no mistaking the energy. I was standing close, and I'll give you a story about this. The first time I saw Tularam in trance, and it was a ceremonial trance and a ceremony. After his trance, what happens is that, okay, one of the main things that I forgot to add to the brain hurts is, how do people get into trance? The easiest way is music. If you play 4 to 7 hertz of music, people's body and brain will entrain to that rhythm, and you will get into trance. So the people who are listening to, that's why they use drumming. So when they drum, so the bhajantris that they're called, they know exactly what tunes to play. So for instance, when we get, let's say we do something over and over again and you get used to it. So people in the community also know that what is the music. The minute the bhajantris see that the ceremony is done and now it's time for the shaman to get into trance, they'll change the music. And with that music, he'll go into trance, and several other people will also go into trance. So the energy is palpable, Shantanu. I could feel that energy. I mean, and what actually happened was that when we were doing, the first time I was documenting it, I didn't know what was going to happen. The whole procession went through these narrow lanes of Old Manali, and my camera person was left behind, and I went into a panic saying that, how will I film this? So my guide and friend Meru is here. We ran, took a shortcut and ran to catch the procession. And later on, my crew, my staff told me that you were running like a mad woman, and you were running, and I could see that I was jumping over a 4-foot, flying over a 4-foot wall. And I'm thinking to myself, how did I do that? And then I wanted to get a shot from above the hill, and my team has said to me, you have actually clambered. You have literally flown from that one rock to the other and climbed. And how did you? Because when I looked back, my crew was half a kilometer away from me.
Nobody
it was
filmed
just the
you
energy.
doing that.
Yeah, I wish they had. But it's true. So this is, you can feel it. You can actually feel the energy. So the first time I was skeptical, but then I realized what was happening. And of course, once you research it and you realize, listen, we are the ones who don't know any better. This is the way 80% of people, the village culture people, this is what they live and this is what they believe in.
So how hard was it for you to, access this world? And how did you manage to do that?
So I was very lucky that I had a very special guide, Meru, who's here. Meru, hands up. Can you please come on stage?
Yeah.
Can we have a chair for him, please? Guys, this is Meru, and he was there with me throughout, guiding me, showing me things. But I have to tell you this very interesting thing about getting permission. It's very difficult because these are very secretive occult rituals. If you read the book, you'll see that I have descriptions of exorcisms, mass exorcisms, different kinds of healing modalities, rituals, divination sessions, people who are oracles. The Devta culture of the valley revolves around the deities of each village has deities. So it revolves around that, around them. And the only conduit to the gods is the shaman. They even have divination sessions where they will go into trance and you ask them a question and then the Devi will answer. He's not answering. So when I had to get permission, we had to ask the Devi for permission. So with every temple that we visited, we had to go and ask the Devi, which means they used to do a divination ritual, which was called Pogle. And I'm not going to explain that, you have to read it. And then if we got permission, we'd be allowed to shoot, and then no one could say anything. For instance, there's the Nag temples, I never got permission. We tried very hard, but we just did not get permission. But we got permission for things that a lot of actually older people were not very happy about because it was the first time it was being documented. But they couldn't say anything because the Devta had given permission.
मेरू जी, अनु जी को परमिशन कैसे मिल गई? मतलब देवताओं ने कैसे दे दिया, देवियों ने कैसे दे दिया परमिशन, क्यों दे दिया?
नहीं, देवी देवता परमिशन जो चीज़ होनी है, अगर ये फिल्म बननी थी इसीलिए परमिशन मिली, अदरवाइज
हाँ, that's what, अब नहीं दे रहे हैं और
परमिशन मिलती तो नहीं है, पर अब एक ऐसा वर्ल्ड बन गया है, एवरीवन हैज़ मोबाइल फोन्स, तो अब रोक भी नहीं सकते हैं. तो फिल्म बनाने के लिए तो नहीं दे रहे हैं, पर अभी हो सकता है आने वाले टाइम में एजुकेशन के हिसाब से अब एक बुक रिलीज़ होगी तो कोई और भी चाहेगा कि भाई ये काम करें.
So I just, the other thing I wanted to add was a few years ago, I went back and to Hardimba temple, and there was a ceremony going on. I took out my camera and I was shut down. And I said, don't you know who I am? Because, you know, by now I was pretty well known in the valley because I spent 3 years traipsing up and down the valley. They said, हाँ Anu Malhotra ji, हमें पता है आप कौन है, पर आपके पास देवी का परमिशन नहीं है, आप कैमरा बंद कीजिए.
Yeah, I
Not
think-
getting permission anymore. It's closed.
हाँ जी, अभी परमिशन शायद ना मिले क्योंकि हमारा जो ये कल्चर है हम ये सोचते हैं कि भाई जो इसमें पावर है तो ये अगर बहुत ज़्यादा लोग इसके ऊपर काम करेंगे तो ये मिक्स हो जाएगा, तो इसमें कुछ मिलावट आ जाएगी.
So Meru, Anu introduced me to Meru, and Meru is now synonymous for me with the valley. And Meru, आप कुछ बताएंगे अपने कल्चर के बारे में? अनु तो आपकी बहुत अच्छी दोस्त है, आप हमारे भी दोस्त हैं, थोड़ा बताइए हमें.
हमारा कल्चर जो है वो बहुत रिच है बिकॉज हम एक कम्युनिटी में रहते हैं, तो कम्युनिटी में हमारा बिलीफ सिस्टम जो है बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग है. तो जब हम कोई भी कार्य करते हैं तो वो कार्य बिना देवी देवताओं के नहीं होता है. तो अगर हमको घर बनाना है उसके लिए भी हम देवता से परमिशन लेंगे, और अगर हमको शादी करनी है उसके लिए भी हमको देवता से परमिशन लेनी पड़ती है. तो हर गांव का अपना अपना देवता है. तो हमारे 9 गांव हैं, तो 9 गांव में हमारे जो देवता हैं वो नाग देवता हैं, व्यास जी हैं और गौतम ऋषि जी. तो 9 गांव के जो देवता है, जो नाग देवता है 18 नाग, ये पैदा भी हमारे गांव में हुए हैं. तो हम लोग जो है देवी देवताओं के बीच में रहे हुए हैं. तो ये इतना विश्वास है हमारा कि जैसे अनु जी तेज सिंह जी के पास जाते हैं तो वो ट्रांस में आके बोलते हैं इनको कि कुछ नज़र लग गई है आपको, तो नज़र लग गई है तो
Yeah, actually, he actually divined an illness, a chronic illness that I had. He just was talking about something else and he just turned to me and said, you know, started saying this. And again, as you know, we were all overwhelmed because the energy was so powerful. But he just said, you've been suffering from a chronic illness for so many years. And I was stunned because I said, how does he know this, you know? But that's what he said to me. So it was quite amazing. I just want to say one thing he said about community, and Pavan also mentioned it. I think the most incredible thing is the sense of community that you find in areas like this. I have also documented indigenous cultures, the Apatani, Konyak. And why I said what Pavan said, that why did I say that we have to look at tribal culture from what we've lost out? Because the sense of community is amazing. I mean, when I was in Nagaland, I'm talking about 30 years ago, a village burnt down. In 3 days, people from surrounding villages, without being invited, have come and built those homes and rehabilitated 30 families without being asked. And when I asked them, I was stunned and I said, what is this? We don't even know our neighbors. And I asked Pong, my interpreter, and he said, well, the difference is that for you all, your individual success is important, but for us, we put community harmony ahead of individual success. Think about that. If you did that, there would be no issues. Now look at what happens even in a place like Manali, and I'm astounded. If in a village there is a wedding, do you know the entire village will get together and will work for that wedding without being asked? There's a system. He'll say, my daughter's getting married. The next day, one man and one woman from every household will come. They will be given tasks. For 3 days of the feasting, someone will cut vegetables, someone will gundo the atta, someone will set up the mics and the music system. They will cook, they will clean, they will serve. And this happens with every wedding, every funeral, every baby. The entire community is there. In my village, when I was there, someone died, 40, and she was she was my housekeeper. For 40 days, one man and one woman will come and sit with you and will cook for you and clean for you because you're not able to do that. This is constant. This is what happens. So what I'm trying to say is the way we live, we need to look back, because this is where we all came from. We need to look back and take our cues from societies which maintain this kind of harmony.
On that note, thank you everybody for
Thank
being
you,
part of-
everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Meru ji, Anu and Antara, thank you so much.
Well, you know, I'm a big admirer of hers to begin with. I think she's an exceptional person. She's one of the most open-minded people I know. She has this curiosity which is unbelievable. She dives into everything that she does with passion. And that's palpable in anything she does. I've seen her artwork, I've seen when she does other things. And of course, she's a renowned documentary filmmaker. And her knowledge, the kind of research she does. Now, I know nothing about shamans. And I'm fascinated because of Anu and the interest that she has sort of sparked in my mind. Before I walked in, and I'm sorry I walked in a little late, but before I walked in, I bought the book because I knew that I wanted to read it.
I was very intrigued by the book itself. I know very little about shamanism generally, and even less about the shamans of Himachal and the Himalayas. And I learned very recently of Anu Malhotra's interest in the area and the fact that she's made 4 documentaries on the subject as well as written this book. So I'm waiting to get my teeth into the book, to sink my teeth into them, to find out more about this.
This event itself has placed the entire context together. It was interesting to see the way people spoke about community and also the kind of storytelling that takes place even within the storytelling. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for Anu as well as the team that she must have put together. Even for her book and how she's trying to vocalize that at this stage. I thought the event itself was superbly interesting, and I myself, as a person who was initially a little skeptical about, shamans and, it's really something I'm not very familiar with, I actually can't wait to get my hands on the book.
I think the event was so sincere. You have so many book launches and so many talks that you go and witness, and then you leave and you're not transformed in any way. But here, everything was so threadbare. Anu is honest to the core. She gives credit where it's required. So if Meru took her around to get an in-depth view in Kullu, he got the credit for that. If she had certain experiences where she did things to integrate with the community, we got a peek into that. So what's nice is it's so honest that it has to be engaging, and that's Anu's philosophy.
To read about the kind of practices and rituals that the book talks about, sitting in a metro city like Delhi and imagining the world that Anu brings to life, and then actually going back to the film and seeing it unfold in front of your eyes. A huge learning experience that there's a world beyond the bubble that we call our high-rise city life.